Caleb slouched against the grimy bathroom stall, arms crossed tight over his chest, scowling at the chipped paint on the door. At 16, he was gangly and awkward, all elbows and knees, with a mop of dark hair that perpetually fell into his hazel eyes. He didn't belong here, not in this sweaty, neon-lit punk club pulsing with noise and chaos. His older brother, Dylan, had dragged him along, claiming it was babysitting since their parents were off on some weekend getaway. Caleb had protested the whole way, his sneakers dragging on the pavement, but Dylan just smirked and said, "Lighten up, kid. You might actually have fun." Fun? Hardly. Caleb planned to snitch to mom and dad the second they got back. Dylan hauling him to a punk rock show was prime blackmail material. For now, though, he'd retreated to the bathroom, the one place where the relentless thrum of guitars and screaming vocals was muffled enough to think straight. The club was a dive, tucked in a sketchy corner of town where the streetlights flickered and the air smelled of stale beer and asphalt. Inside, it was a riot of leather jackets, spiked hair, and flashing lights, the crowd a sea of bodies slamming into each other in the mosh pit. Caleb hated it, the noise, the heat, the way everyone seemed to revel in the anarchy. He'd locked himself in the stall, the cold metal partition a flimsy shield against the chaos outside. Graffiti covered the walls, scrawled band names, crude drawings, phone numbers promising a good time, and the floor was sticky with God knows what. He leaned his head back, closing his eyes, willing the night to end. But the music wouldn't let him go. Even through the walls, it seeped in raw, jagged chords and a pounding bass line that rattled his bones. The band on stage, some local outfit called Hexed Riot, had the crowd in a frenzy, their energy infectious in a way Caleb couldn't ignore. He shifted uncomfortably, feeling a strange itch under his skin, like static crawling up his spine. "Stupid Dylan," he muttered, kicking the stall door. "Stupid club." The itch grew, spreading across his scalp, and he scratched at it absently, figuring it was just the damp heat of the bathroom getting to him. Then the song changed. A new riff tore through the air, sharp and hypnotic, the singer's voice weaving lyrics Caleb couldn't quite catch, something about breaking free, shedding skin, becoming alive. The itch turned into a tingle, warm and electric, sinking into his muscles. His sneakers squeaked as he straightened up, frowning. His hair felt heavier, brushing his shoulders when it shouldn't have. He reached up, and his fingers tangled in strands that were longer, silkier, shifting from dull brown to a vivid jet black streaked with electric purple. "What the hell?" he whispered, voice cracking mid-sentence into something higher, softer. His reflection wasn't visible, no mirror in this dump, but he didn't need one to feel the changes. His lanky frame tightened, hips widening as his jeans hugged curves he didn't have before. His chest tingled, then swelled, straining against his faded t-shirt until the seams creaked. He stumbled forward, gripping the stall wall, as his legs lengthened, his sneakers morphing into scuffed combat boots with silver studs. The tingling surged, a wave of heat and energy that made his head spin, and his mind buzzed with new sensations, sharp, wild, alive. His nails darkened, growing long and pointed, painted a glossy black that caught the dim light. A studded choker materialized around his neck, cool against his heating skin, and his lips felt fuller, slick with the gloss he could taste. Caleb's breath quickened, panic warring with a strange thrill. The music pulsed louder, syncing with his racing heartbeat, and he couldn't tell if he was fighting it or giving in. His memories flickered: school, his quiet room, the boy he'd been blurring into something new. She know, he shook his head, but the thought corrected itself. She, Chloe. The name settled in her mind like it had always been there, bold and unapologetic. Chloe blinked, the stall door rattling as she pushed it open. The bathroom smelled different now, less like mildew, more like sweat and musk, a raw edge that stirred something in her. She ran a hand through her hair, smirking at how it fell in perfect, rebellious waves, and caught a whiff of leather and cigarette smoke clinging to her clothes. Her outfit had shifted: tight black jeans ripped at the knees, a cropped tank top studded with metal, showing off a toned midriff pierced with a silver ring. She felt strong, sexy, like she'd been carved from the night itself. A memory flashed, not Caleb's, but hers. She'd come here for a reason, hadn't she? Her favorite spot in this grimy bathroom, a ritual she knew by heart. She sauntered to the far wall, where a jagged hole had been punched through the partition, and took her place with a practiced ease. The music outside swelled, a roaring anthem that made her blood sing, and she licked her lips full, painted red, as she heard the telltale sound of a zipper on the other side. A thick, throbbing cock slid through the glory hole, eager and waiting, and Chloe's smirk widened. She flexed into position, her studded body moving with the grace she'd owned for years, though some distant part of her marveled at it. She teased it first, lips brushing the tip, sharp nails tracing the shaft with a playful cruelty. "Not bad," she murmured, voice low and sultry. Wonder idly if hers had looked like this back when she was someone else. The thought flickered and died. Playtime was over. She took it in, skilled and confident, her tongue working with a rhythm that matched the pounding drums outside. The taste, the heat, the power of it sent a shiver through her, and she swallowed with a satisfied hum, wiping her mouth with the back of her hand as she stood. The bathroom door banged open, letting in a blast of sound and light, and Chloe straightened, brushing off her jeans. She didn't care about hiding anymore. She wanted the dance floor, the crush of bodies, the chaos she'd been born for. As she stepped out, the club hit her like a wave, strobe lights painting the crowd in jagged colors, the air thick with sweat and spilled beer, the band tearing into a new song that made her bones vibrate. Dylan was out there somewhere, probably headbanging with his idiot friends, but Chloe didn't care about ratting him out anymore. That was Caleb's game, and Caleb was gone. She wove through the crowd, hips swaying, drawing eyes, some hungry, some jealous. A guy with a mohawk and a lip ring caught her gaze, nodding her toward the mosh pit. "Wanna dance?" he shouted over the noise, his grin all teeth and promise. Chloe laughed, a sound that cut through the din, and grabbed his hand, pulling him into the fray. The music was magic. She realized Hexed Riot's songs didn't just play. They changed you, woke something primal and free. She jumped, crashed, spun, her body alive with it, and as she lost herself in the rhythm, a faint memory of a locked stall faded like smoke. Outside the pit, a figure leaned against the bar, watching her with keen eyes. The band's guitarist, a weary woman with tattoos snaking up her arms, smirked into her drink. "Another one," she muttered, strumming an invisible chord on the air. The song shifted, darker and wilder, and Chloe's laughter rang out, her new life unfurling with every note. Chloe threw herself into the mosh pit with abandon, her body colliding with the sweaty, thrashing crowd as Hexed Riot's music pulsed through her veins. The mohawk guy whose name she didn't bother to catch kept pace with her, his hands brushing her waist as they spun and shoved through the chaos. The air was electric, charged with the raw energy of the band's riffs and the crowd's primal screams. Her studded boots stomped the sticky floor, each step grounding her deeper into this new self. Chloe, the girl who belonged here, who thrived in the noise and the dark. The faint echo of Caleb's whiny protests felt like a stranger's dream, dissolving with every chord that ripped through the club. The song ended in a screech of feedback, and the crowd roared, a tidal wave of sound that made Chloe's chest hum. She stumbled out of the pit, breathless and grinning, her black and purple hair plastered to her face with sweat. Mohawk guy followed, offering her a crumpled cigarette from his pocket. She took it, letting him light it with the flick of his Zippo, and inhaled deeply. The smoke curled in her lungs, sharp and bitter, anchoring her to the moment. "You're wild," he said, his voice rough from shouting, eyes glinting with something hungry. Chloe blew a ring of smoke into his face and smirked. "You have no idea." The band launched into their next track, slower this time, a sludgy, hypnotic beat that slithered through the room like a living thing. Chloe felt it again, that itch, that tingle creeping up her spine, but now, it wasn't alarming. It was exhilarating, like the music was peeling back another layer of her, revealing something even wilder beneath. Her skin prickled, and she glanced down to see faint, shimmering lines tracing her arms, tattoos that hadn't been there before, curling like vines or scales, glowing faintly under the club's neon lights. She flexed her fingers, and the lines pulsed, syncing with the bass line. "What the hell?" she muttered, but her voice carried a thrill, not fear. Across the room, the guitarist at the bar narrowed her eyes, tracking Chloe's every move. She set her drink down, her fingers twitching as if itching to play more than just air. "She's catching on fast," the woman said to no one in particular, her lips curling into a knowing grin. She tilted her head toward the stage, where the lead singer, a lanky figure with wild eyes and a voice like a chainsaw, caught her gaze and nodded subtly. The song shifted again, the tempo picking up, and the air in the club thickened, heavy with something unspoken. The crowd didn't notice, too lost in their frenzy, but Chloe felt it, a pull, a call, tugging at her core. She stubbed out the cigarette on the edge of a table and pushed back into the crowd, drawn toward the stage like a moth to flame. The glowing lines on her arms brightened, spreading across her shoulders, her chest, weaving a pattern she couldn't decipher but somehow understood. Her senses sharpened, the smell of leather and booze, the heat of bodies pressing in, the vibrations of the music rattling her teeth. All of it was louder, clearer, alive. She reached the front of the stage just as the singer crouched down, locking eyes with her. His pupils were slits, reptilian, and his grin was too wide, too sharp. "You hear it, don't you?" he rasped, his voice cutting through the noise straight into her skull. "The song's yours now." Before she could answer, the guitarist struck a chord, a single, piercing note that hit Chloe like a shockwave. Her vision blurred, and for a split second, she wasn't in the club anymore. She was somewhere else, somewhere vast and dark, a cavernous void lit by flickering purple flames. Shadows moved in the distance, massive and sinuous, their growls harmonizing with the music still echoing in her ears. She felt her body shift again, not just in shape but in essence, stronger, stranger, something ancient waking up inside her. Then she snapped back, gasping, the club's chaos crashing over her once more. The crowd cheered, oblivious, but Chloe's heart raced with a mix of dread and exhilaration. She looked down at her hands, her nails were longer now, claw-like, and the glowing tattoos pulsed faster, hotter. The singer straightened, laughing into the mic, and the band kicked into a new song, wilder than anything before. Chloe's body moved on its own, leaping into the air, higher than she should have been able to, landing with a grace that wasn't human. The mosh pit parted around her, some staring in awe, others too drunk to care. As she danced or fought, she couldn't tell which, her movements fluid and feral. Dylan stumbled through the crowd then, his face flushed from beer and headbanging, and froze when he saw her. "Caleb, what the?" His voice cut off as Chloe turned to him, her hazel eyes now flecked with violet, glowing faintly in the dark. She smirked, stepping closer, her presence towering despite her height. "Caleb's gone, big bro," she said, her voice a sultry growl that made him flinch. "Name's Chloe now, and you're not babysitting anymore." Before Dylan could respond, the club's lights flickered, and a low rumble shook the floor, not from the speakers, but from something deeper, something real. The guitarist at the bar stood, slinging her instrument over her shoulder, and muttered, "Showtime." Outside, the flickering streetlights dimmed entirely, and a shadow loomed over the building, massive, clawed, and alive. Hexed Riot's music wasn't just sound. It was a summons, and Chloe was its conduit. She felt it, the connection, the power surging through her as the walls trembled. The crowd screamed, some in terror, some in ecstasy, as cracks spiderwebbed across the ceiling. Chloe laughed, a wild, untamed sound, and turned toward the stage, where the band played on, unfazed. The singer winked at her, and the guitarist strummed a riff that made the air ripple. Whatever was coming, Chloe wasn't afraid. She was part of it now, part of the music, the chaos, the thing clawing its way into the world.